tends to happen. They tend to go round and round on the spot. When they go round and round on the spot, it means that the weight distribution is wrong, and you need I can't remember what you need actually. You need the weight further forward in the direction in which it's travelling. So it's travelling that way, isn't it? So oh yeah, it's got a bit bent as well. So I've got the weight distribution a tiny bit wrong. Very tricky to catch.
So if it's continuously going round in circles, that means either it's bumped and been damaged and needs correcting, or the weight distribution
is a bit off, yes. Okay. So it goes along, yeah, like this, like that, until it bumps into something, and then it does that, so it changes direction. And that looks pretty simple, but it's very difficult to get the weight distribution right. To do that, you have to understand how it works.
Understand how it works in what way?
You have to understand the principle, otherwise you don't stand a chance of getting it to work. And you can't really understand that just by looking at it. So I've made a great big one that goes fairly slowly, in the hope that it'll be possible to understand how it works. Once again, no switches, no battery holders. That's it. So it's just made of soft drinks can and a motor, really, and some wire in a cornflakes packet. There we are, that's set. Right, so with any luck you can do just the same thing, but slower. And you can see what it's doing, because it's doing it slowly.
Is there a trick to weighting it, or?
Not this one, not really. No, as you can see it's not really going in straight lines, which means I haven't quite got it right.
And how does this one differ apart from?
Nothing. Well, it's no difference. The only difference is it's bigger and slower, so that you can see what it's doing. And you really don't need any special stuff to make that. You don't really need any such, you don't need so much understanding of how it works, because it's all much less critical.
Is that because it's slower, or?
I'm not sure really. I think it might have something to do with the Coke can, because the Coke can is a much better wheel, really. And it kind of spreads the weight sideways. The reason it's square, yeah, is because it's much easier to make square things than round things. If you've got a pie dish that's round, a plastic pie dish, then that's okay, but you can't easily get big pie dishes that are that big, so you have to make something, and it's easier to make it square than it is to make it round.
So if you're making it from scratch, the easiest one is the square.
Yep.
What's the wire coming off the side?
Right, that's that wire there.
Yes.
Yeah, well, if you bend that out a bit so it touches the side a bit, it makes it hesitate as it goes round, and so it alters course in a much more sort of, oops, not too much, alters course in a much more kind of controlled way.
So the shape of the wire kind of depends on
Well,
what...
what it does is it brushes against the side, because the thing's square, as it goes round every side it touches, it brushes against it. See?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not actually brushing against all of them, but it is that one and that one, I think.
So if you wanted to move in a less erratic way, you make the wire touch the sides.
One of the things that happens with these is they tend to do this. What you see it doing at the minute. So it just sits there doing this. And the way you can stop that with a square one is put a bit of bent wire on, because that makes it pause slightly as it goes round.
So you wouldn't have the wire on one of the circular ones?
No, it's only really relevant to the square one.
Are there any other design differences between the square and the circular ones?
No, I don't think so. Right, I'm going to take the motorised bit off, okay, in the hope that it will work just like an ordinary sort of straight line vehicle. Might do. What do you reckon? Kind of, yeah. But it gets stuck, see? So that's fine. Something that just gets stuck all the time isn't really that interesting. But anyway, that's the basic mechanism. Pretty simple. The weight of the battery balances the weight of the motor, and you just bodge it all up out of bent wire. It's where you need a switch.
So if you were to customise...
I don't have a switch, and most people on the planet don't have a switch. Do you have a switch?
I don't have a switch, no.
No, there you are, see. So every time you use something like a switch, you make the thing that much more inaccessible.
So with time and resources, you could add a switch, LED lights to make it flashy, and
well, you could
smaller to make them mysterious.
Smaller. Yeah, you could also use a lithium polymer battery if you were clever.
What have you used?
I haven't done that because of the problem of what happens when the thing stalls. Film me, okay? quite hard to catch. See it going round and round on the spot? See that? You see that?
You have a runaway. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that this outer wire forms the chassis and the shape of
Yeah, and that it just carries the motor and the battery.
one at either end because
One
they
at either
balance
side
each
so it
other out.
balances, yeah.
And the can is attached to the chassis
With
using
one wire that goes through the middle.
It goes straight through the middle, so not
Straight
just
through the
in
middle.
one end and out the other.
In one end, out the other, yeah.
Okay. And if you're making a square one, you have this wire to help.
You can have that wire, yeah, that's an optional extra.
But what would it do if you didn't have the wire?
Well, it would probably work, but sometimes they have an annoying habit of going round and round on the spot. In which case, like, oops, let's bend that in. Yeah, so they have this defect that they, instead of going along, they go round and round on the spot without going anywhere.
And that's what happens with the circular ones?
Yeah, that's what always happens to them. If you made one, that would happen, yeah? So one thing you can do about that is put an extra bit of wire that brushes against the sides as it goes round. So that makes it pause. Every time that happens, it pauses. And that gives it enough time to pick up speed. See, every 90 degrees it'll just pause a little bit. And that stops this going round and round on the spot thing.
But you can't do that on a circular one because there's nothing to stop it.
That's right, yeah. It's another good reason for making a square one.
Yeah, so in some ways it's better to have a square one.
Yeah, if I was starting, I would definitely start with a square one. Oh, one other thing that might be worth saying. If you did ever understand how it worked to the point where you could make one of these, it might be quite a good basis for learning 3D printing.
Okay.
Because you see all these fiddly bits of bent wire and hot glue and stuff? Well, you could 3D print a beautiful, neat little component that would do that. So, and you'd be motivated to do it because you'd want to make something that was sellable.
So after your practice run and working it out, you could then...
Yeah, you could, and you would end up, even if you ended up with 1,000 unsold robots, you would also know a lot more about 3D printing. And the other thing is you could learn about injection moulding. And injection moulding has the reputation of being hopelessly exotic. But in fact it isn't. You can buy very cheap, simple injection moulding machines, and you can make very simple injection moulding dies yourself.
And
But if one person both designs the robot and designs the injection moulding die, then you can sort of jiggle the two designs.
Yeah.
So you can make a really, really cheap injection moulding die, sort of homemade one, and use it on your robot. But if you were to go to a die maker with a plan, and say, please make this, he'd make it, but he'd charge you about £20,000.
And explaining to someone who has no idea about any of these things, what's a die?
Oh, it's a jelly mould,
Okay.
but for plastic.
And would that be for
all these fiddly little bits?
So for all of the components?
Well, yeah, depending on how you designed it. I mean, you could do all of them, or you could just do one of them, like the thing that holds the battery holder to the axle, for example, or the thing that holds the motor onto the maypole. The other thing is they're very, very small, so you're not very. You can make very, very small 3D prints once you've designed them. And I think you pay for 3D printing if you have it done online according to how much the thing weighs. So you can make those things so teeny you could churn them out by the thousand.
Cost efficient.
Cost efficiently, yes.